All right, I think that's good. Let's get started. So hopefully this will be pretty chill. But thanks everyone for coming to the TechPod event, the Business Development Intern edition. It's a series where we're trying to showcase the more interesting roles on the business side of tech. Maybe some stuff that you don't really see in your career events on campus. Vicky and I kind of started TechPod with the vision of, showing that, you don't have to go into consulting and finance if you're a business or econ major, and you don't have to be in software engineering to be in tech industry. And Molly, Colin, and Caitlin really proved that with their summer internships this year. So hopefully we'll get some good insights into just how they got their internships, what business development is, and maybe how you can do the same thing, and just what a career in business development can lead to. So we're going to do the pre-selected questions that you guys have already submitted, but we will also have the Slido, so you guys can start asking questions already. I'll paste the link right in the chat, so you guys can submit questions there. And yeah, let's get started. You need permission for the Slido form. The Google form. Okay, Vicky will figure that
let
out.
me that setting real quick.
Yep. All right. Yep. Definitely fill out the form for coffee chat raffle once we figure that out, and then we'll do Slido as well. I think Slido should be free to open to any questions. So yeah, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into the questions.
Yeah, I can start off then. So hi, everybody. My name is Colin. I'm currently a student at Gonzaga University studying management information systems. I started doing internships back in high school within the business and marketing world. And as I progressed throughout college, I found an equal passion for technology. So recently I've been completing internships that work almost at this intersection between business and technology. And my last one was a business development intern at Microsoft over the summer.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Delaney, and like I said earlier, I'm from the west suburbs of Chicago, and I'm currently a senior at Indiana University in Bloomington. And my majors are professional sales and marketing. And similar to Colin, it wasn't really until doing different internships. I've had 3 in software sales over the course of being in college, where I really realized, oh, I do want to be in software, and I do want to be on the business development side of it. And I think especially this summer at Salesforce, that really resonated with me strongly. And I now know that that's the correct career path for me. So I'm excited to kind of share the summer with you guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin. I'm a senior at University of Michigan, studied business, and grew up in the Silicon Valley. So always kind of had that interest in tech, but didn't really want to code. And so went through college just doing different internships. I did product marketing in tech. I did investment banking, consulting, and now did partner development at Amazon. And partner development is similar to business development, but a little different. So I can go into that more later.
Awesome. Sounds like we have some pretty cool, diverse experiences here. I'll get into the first question. So what made you guys want to pursue business development, and what were the fun parts of being a business development intern?
Yeah, so for myself, I wasn't really even aware of what business development was until about a year ago. I really wanted to work at Microsoft for the summer, and the business development internship application happened to match a lot of my previous experience. So when I got the initial first interview, I wasn't even sure there was something that I potentially want to pursue or go down that road with. But when I learned, at least at Microsoft, it's a very cross-functional role where you get to collaborate with a massive team of people, including product management, product marketing, engineering leads, and just a plethora of different individuals within the company. And you almost get to help fill certain product gaps within the company's portfolio as a high impact intern in that role, which is always an interesting thing. That sounded like a fantastic opportunity to me. And I would say like one of like the most fun things about like working within business development at pretty much any company, especially at Microsoft though, is like the plethora of like diverse and unique products you get to work on. So like when you think of Microsoft, there's everything from Xbox and Microsoft Teams to HoloLens, and such a unique variety of products you get to get your hands dirty with. And as like a business development person at Microsoft per se, it's all about trying to curate an amazing experience for that end user. So you're working very closely with the product team, trying to develop those roadmaps to make amazing features that people are going to love at the end of the day. And that's what's really fun about the role, at least for me.
I think for myself, kind of growing up, I always knew I wanted to go down the business path. And I was kind of influenced a little bit by my parents, my older brother, both kind of going in the sales business development direction. But it wasn't really until college and like getting involved in different business organizations on campus where I could kind of get an example of, oh, this is what business development is like. This is what holding a meeting is like, and kind of trying to deliver value to a customer. So I think it was kind of getting involved in all of those things. And then especially my past internships that made me really excited about it. It can be challenging a lot of times. You'll get a lot of no's, but getting that winning and learning that you got that yes, it's kind of like an adrenaline kick. And I even got a kind of a small taste of that doing cold calling over the past couple of summers. So I think that's really what kind of made me excited and want to go into it more.
Yeah, I agree with what Molly said. Like business development / partner development can be really challenging because you are interacting with a lot of people, and you are in a way asking for them to buy into what you're selling. And so it can be very challenging. For me personally, I was interested in it because I really like talking to people, working with people. And it's one of those roles where you're just constantly in front of people. And for me personally, that was working with a lot of software companies that were working with the government and were building on top of AWS. So that was very exciting because AWS grew so much, even just in the span of time that I was there. And helping to work with these companies like Palantir and Esri were really exciting. And I have always been interested in tech and all the new technologies, and being able to learn about that from those companies was really exciting.
Awesome. What is the most essential skill do you think is needed to succeed in the role of a business development intern? And what advice would you give to anyone who's looking to pursue this role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think within business development, or at least what I understood from Microsoft, you need to be able to acquire the right amount of information and do research and really be able to go into meetings and state and convince others of your proposition. So for example, at Microsoft, like hypothetically, if I think we should acquire like a Nike, it's so important when I go into that meeting with those stakeholders that I have amazing data behind me, both quantitative and qualitative, in a way that I can show through charts, graphs, visualizations that can really support my case just beyond me telling them why I think it's a great idea. And it's very important like have some level of technology hard skills, or at least within the position that I was in, knowing Tableau or a Looker or like a Power BI for like data purposes can really take your like your analysis as a business person to the next level, because you're almost able to talk with those engineering people as well as the business people and act cross-functionally and be collaborative among many different groups in the organization. So that's a massive plus if you have a few of those hard skills to pair with your soft skills.
I feel like everything Colin said is extremely correct. I guess to add to that, I would say to be extremely resourceful. So always keep the idea in mind. Ask 3 people before you ask management layer above you, because you need to go to them and be like, okay, I tried X, Y, and Z. This is what I found. This is what's not working. Like, how would you recommend I go forward now? So just always, and that even goes into like a new grad role, but to always be resourceful, because management loves to see that and to not feel like they're babysitting their interns and always trying to answer their questions. And then I would say also too, when you're an intern, it's such a crazy experience because you basically have this untapped access into this huge company for 2 to 3 months. So use that time. And it's great too as an intern because you're not like held to a quota. You're not trying to make 60 dials in a day. You have that extra time in the workday to reach out and do coffee chats with many different layers of management. And everyone, especially like in those higher levels of management, they love being able to network with people and kind of give advice. And so definitely take advantage of that and reach out to lots of different people, touch a lot of different parts of the organization. But also another thing too, going off of that, is what I would do at the end of all of those coffee chats was say, okay, who do you look at as a superstar in the office that's in your position, and what is their name? So then you're constantly just growing and growing your network with all these people who are kicking butt at their job. So I'd say definitely network and be resourceful.
Yeah, both. Everything that Colin and Molly were saying is absolutely true. I'm going to use some of Amazon's leadership principles just because I feel like they embody what does make a successful intern and just overall in business dev. So like ownership, I think that like they were saying that it can be really hard when you have so many projects going on. You're not usually not just working on one thing, that you have to really be, as they said, resourceful and go after. When you're talking to engineers, for example, you might need to learn the jargon, learn how to talk to them. And also when you're talking to, marketing, that's what I did over the summer too. I worked a lot with marketing. I had to learn, for example, specific to the company, it can be very different. So I had to focus on AWS joint marketing. And I ended up, one of my projects was working on a playbook, and I really had to find everything myself, really self-service culture there. I would also say influencing without authority. Like as an intern, you are trying to get yourself on projects, trying to get as involved as possible. And you have to be able to get people, if you're suggesting a new idea, to buy into what you're saying. And with business dev, you are trying to influence people all the time. So it's a pretty important skill. And just in general, communication, I think, cannot emphasize it enough. Like you will be in client calls and you have to a lot of times disguise the fact you're an intern. So that's what I did. I would just pretend, I was a full-time employee, be able to like hold my own on the calls, provide my own input. All of those things are really important.
Yeah, Caitlin, I feel like you really touched on something that can really be applied to all internships, really, and especially something in business development. So kind of a follow-up from that, maybe Colin and Molly, you could, I'm just curious to know, is there any time, can you think of a time during your internship where you had to, you really took ownership and initiative, and this concept of like influencing without authority? Are there any interesting stories you could tell us about a time where you had to do that?
Yeah, so at least at Microsoft, they're very open to allowing the interns to have those upper level discussions with people that are on like the CVP level, even often like EVP, or most often directors. So they make it a paramount part of the internship for the interns to get that upper level experience with the executives at any point in the process of Microsoft. So at least for me, you almost have to like go in with the mentality of you're not just like an intern. You're like Molly and Keelan were saying, it's more of you're a full-time employee. Even though you might be an intern there, you have to look at yourself like you're on the same level as anybody else that just showed up at the company is ready to go. So with my specific projects, when you're going into those meetings, I typically didn't even like introduce myself as an intern. I'm just like, hey, I'm Colin. This is my project. I'm super excited to share with you. And I dive right into the presentation there. So it's really a mindset game, I feel like, working as an intern within a big tech company, because it can be frightening and scary sometimes because there is so many people, so many different tasks being given to you, and just like it's an overwhelming process. So if you're in the right headset, it can really take you to the next level and bring your presentation skills to a place where you can be confident and you can really showcase your best abilities.
I'd say for kind of my experience, it was mainly the main part of the role was to support the outbound business development team in making blueprinting lead lists for them to then call into for new business opportunities. But another big part of the internship too was sales training to get you ready for the role after, which would be the first role on the phones. And the internship actually mirrored exactly what the new grad role is, which is a 3 to 4 month version of the internship. So I wasn't necessarily a part of a lot of conversations or in meetings talking strategy, but I think one area that I did really want to be a part of more was the cold calling aspect, because even though the internship wasn't customer facing, we were doing this sales training. So I'd say kind of my moment where I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do this or not, but I went ahead and did it was I asked one of my reps after running a mock call with him for practice. And I was like, hey, if you think I am good enough, I would love to call into your book of business for like 2 hours. I can send you a calendar invite. But we ended up doing that twice. And now too, I can take that as nuggets into my interview with them, hopefully in the next couple of months, depending on the COVID situation. But take that into that being like, I asked and I was allowed to do this, and I didn't schedule a meeting, but I now have this experience that a lot of others in this role wouldn't have had. So definitely ask. And even if you don't know if you should, like try and be a part of as many things as possible. Like I said, you're only there for 2 to 3 months. The worst someone can say is no. In a business development too, it's going to show them that you're willing to ask. So I'd say that was my example.
Yeah, going off what Molly said, like one of the things that I also, to stay involved and show that I really wanted to be a part of as many things as possible, I was in charge of like sort of like a project manager role for building these dashboards and project plans for 2 of our partners. And so that involved talking to people about like why we should use this data tool, what to even put in it, because I had no idea in the beginning, and just in general have calls with just even the clients themselves. And that was really scary for me at first, but one time my team didn't show up because one of their other meetings ran long, so it was just me and him talking for like 30 minutes, and he eventually invited me to like his house in like the national park that he like always was at. And I was like, wow, he doesn't know I'm an intern. And we ended up just I was able to hold a conversation for 30 minutes, and that was because I had like taken ownership and still went with it.
Super cool. Super cool. I love hearing those kinds of stories. If we could take a step back and just, I don't think I've quite asked you guys, like, what was your project? What did you guys do? Like, what was the main responsibilities that you had? Are there any non-NDA projects that you could share with us? Like, what was the main meat of your internship?
Yeah, so most business development roles at various like tech companies are quite different. Some are a lot more focused on sales, some are more focused on research, like market research, and some are more focused on like the upper level strategy behind like the actual product that you're working on. At least for me, it was really working closely with the product marketing and the product management team to fill those particular product gaps and basically work on the overall product roadmap. So typically business development at Microsoft, you have the product team and they use a large amount of like engineering resources to build out these new features. But if they're looking at a potential external company or another option for what they're looking into filling these features, and they come to business development. And business development typically looks at these external startup companies and legacy companies to fill these particular features. Or we go out and acquire a company to bring in the Microsoft and make our products better. So at least from my standpoint, what I was focusing on was our CRM and ERP side of the business. So enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, and a bit of like mixed reality with the HoloLens team as well, which is super exciting. But my job is like look at different startups, specifically in places like Silicon Valley and like Israel and Singapore, and look at these potential software companies that happen to be startups that we could potentially partner with or acquire and then bring them in-house to make our products better. So from that standpoint, I think I analyzed maybe like 40, 50, 60 potential partners that we could take into Microsoft to then enhance our products and make them better overall for like the end consumer. So it was really about the upper level strategy with a good mix of like market research as well to figure out how we can make our products better for like the ultimate consumer. And that's kind of like the Microsoft mentality, at least from like a business development standpoint.
That's so interesting to hear because mine was definitely not on that side of the business. It was definitely more of the sales focused business development, traditional software sales, what you would think of. But kind of like I said earlier, like 70% of our week would be focused around supporting an outbound sales team. So basically kind of the progression of sales within Salesforce is you do that entry level role for like 4 to 5 months. Then you're promoted to a sales development representative, which is you take all inbound leads for a year and try and schedule meetings for your account executive to run. And then you move to a business development, which is all outbound, which was the teams we supported. And then after that, you're an account executive. So all you're doing is just showing up to the meetings that people scheduled for you and running them and hopefully getting a deal out of it. But so that was kind of the chunk of my week was all about metrics. So how many contacts was I adding into, we called our own Salesforce site Org 62 because it would get a little confusing if we were like, add to Salesforce. But so it was just, I was in Org 62 most out of my day. Also kind of coming up with fun ways. I was the fun spiff officer for my team, meaning we would kind of schedule different fun events for the team throughout the week. And we also would put on these spiffs, which were competitions. So if whoever added the most contacts that week got a $25 gift card, or I would even run the spiffs with my BDR team because I wanted my metrics to go up if they were getting meetings on my contacts. I did one actually that it got them all really excited, but I was trying to motivate like 18, 25 to 30-year-olds to call into my book of business, but actually got them to do a competition where the losing team had to create a TikTok dance and like show it to the rest of the team. So I'd say definitely too, be creative in any role you're in. Like they're looking at you as another employee too, not just an intern, especially if it's a good company. And I feel like most are, but they value your feedback and creativity. So definitely allow that to shine. But the last part of the role was then that sales training I mentioned earlier, which really accumulated to running as many mock calls with management at the end of the summer. So, yeah.
This just went to show that like business dev is so different at every company because I also did not do what you two did. So I sort of realized I need to backtrack a little bit and explain what even partner development is because it's not common at all. It's specific even in Amazon just to AWS. So basically AWS, the cloud, they need or they work with partners. So that could be nonprofits, it could be independent software vendors, it could be the whole gamut. And basically they build on AWS and sell products and services. So like Airbnb is an example of a company that uses AWS and sells a service. And so the partner dev team works with these partners to help them use more of AWS so that their charge rate goes up so that we get, and my particular team, the sales team, gets billed based on how much they use. So basically we were coming up with development opportunities, like how we could help them market or even develop their own business. And I worked particularly with 2 companies called Esri and MarkLogic. And I came up with dashboards and project plans to help them track and increase their use of development opportunities. And because AWS was growing so much, actually like the managers changed while I was there. And so this project plan became like really crucial to not only the partner to know what was going on, but also the new manager. And also I worked on just working with the other partner development interns. We built like a website to help track what everyone was doing because we had very niche roles that all across Amazon, they also had no idea what we were doing. And so that included the go-to-market team, except the independent software vendor acceleration team. And then I also worked on marketing opportunities just to help my team in general. because we were quickly adding people and sort of low on staff. So overall, I would like to sum it up as like a mix of consulting and sales. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing all your thoughts on that. Yeah, I didn't really know very much about partner development. But yeah, sounds super interesting. I'm going to take a couple of Slido questions because most of them so far have been focused on the role itself. I think people are wondering, well, how did you guys get to where you got? So I have a question at the top of the Slido that says, what's the best way to get your foot into the door at these big tech companies with minimal past experiences?
Yeah, so at least the route that I would recommend is like first off, apply online. It's always good to get into the online portal and make it into the company's database. That's the best thing you can possibly do. But if you're able to go on to certain platforms like a LinkedIn, like a Jumpstart, like a Handshake, and actually reach out to people within the company, whether that may be the hiring manager or a recruiter, and make those initial connections, that can do so much good for just your ability to potentially get that first interview. For example, you can literally go on LinkedIn, type up business development analyst or manager at Microsoft, and you can ping that person. You can be like, hey, I just applied for this role. I'm super excited about it. I just wanted to let you know, and they could potentially pass your resume and your information along to the recruiting team. So just like thinking outside the box and going after strategies that maybe other students haven't tried or haven't done in the past is going to serve you well. So going beyond that initial application is probably the best thing I can recommend. In a place like Microsoft, going after recruiters or hiring managers can do you very well if you do it right.
So I would also second what Colin said, especially with companies like Salesforce, Microsoft, Amazon. I mean, it's huge. And even when I got in the first week, I was so overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, there's just so many people and so many resources. So sometimes communication can be tough. And between the different departments, or an application could be lost, or they all use these ATS systems that pull resumes by these buzzwords. So first of all, look at the job description. And I feel like this is something always said, but people don't do enough of it, and include the buzzwords from that job description that you want in your resume. Like my job the summer before this was at Career Builder, which was an applicant tracking software. And so we sold this exact product. So play to that, like put all those keywords in so your resume pops up to the top. Also too, like what Colin said, but I think even do it as early as you want to work for that company. So say you're a junior and you want to work for Salesforce coming out of college. They currently don't know if they're going to continue the business development internship for next summer, but focus on the new grad role. So then a year out, reach out to those people, hold a 20-minute informational interview, even 15 minutes, and then follow up with them like once a quarter up until that time or that moment where it's time to apply. That way that you have someone in the company knowing this person followed up with me last year in interest for this job and has kept in touch with me like 3 times in the last year, stayed true to her word. And what that is going to show too, especially for if you're wanting a more business development role, that's that typical sales side. The recruitment process mimics how well you're going to do in your role at the company. So it's almost, I look at the job offer as signing the deal, and you want to get that deal signed. So you're not just going to reach out to a customer once. No, you're going to keep calling them, and don't keep calling a recruiter, but you know what I mean? You could take it down to kind of a more softer approach with that. But I think definitely it's important to, if you want to work for Google after college, reach out now, tell them now, and keep up that communication. And it can be a once a year thing too, but it shows grit, and it shows you're true to your word and that you really do want to work there, and they'll want to give you an interview.
Yeah, I agree with what has been said. I will say though, interestingly, I did ask my manager / he volunteered this information that he actually went through all the resumes himself. And I guess with that, because a human is actually looking at it, then if you do have minimal experience, really highlighting like what you did and try to build off, like maybe during the school year, taking on other experiences, or even starting at a startup and then moving to another big company, would be my advice. But I do think that it's interesting for that. And then my freshman summer, I worked at Samsung. He also actually read my resume. So I was surprised for those that they did that, but just thought it would be helpful to let people know that.
That's super interesting. I love what you said, Molly, how like the application process for business development is a lot like the actual job. And that's so true. It's like persistence, networking. Yeah, it's really interesting. Could you guys talk about a little bit more about your individual interview experience? What was the interview, and from from application to offer, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so at least on Microsoft, it's a pretty structured process, I would say. So I went with the route of just applying online through the online portal, which I would probably not recommend for most people. I somehow snuck through the cracks, thankfully. But anyway, at least on Microsoft, you're either going to have a recruiter or a team member for like that initial interview. For me, it was like a 25, 30-minute screen actually with the team member within business development, which was kind of surprising to me. So it was a lot more like focused on the actual job description and what I would potentially be doing. And I kind of had like come up with stuff on the spot around like how I would reverse engineer like my experience and background to fit that role. So I was expecting like more like a behavioral interview or just like talk about like my past experience. But there's a lot more subsection around like the actual processes of what I'd be doing in the actual role, which is pretty interesting for a first initial interview. So it's a little bit different. Some people have like 2 or 3 kind of like screen interviews with Microsoft. Some people have 1. It was just 1 for me. Typically, it's going to be different this year because it's virtual, but they'll fly you up to Redmond, the campus, up in the Seattle area, and you'll have most likely 3 or 4 back-to-back-to-back interviews. And that's going to be anything from a very casual interview for an hour with a team member to something which might be more behavioral or analytical or like situational. Like I had one interview where I had a bunch of like hypothetical questions about like our products and like what would I do like in this particular situation compared to this one, and just things along those lines. So you really have to be prepared for the extent of just talking about yourself and having like a basic conversation with like an individual across the room, to everything from problem solving on the spot and figuring out pretty large scale situations that can have a massive impact on Microsoft as like just an interviewee. So it's a pretty interesting process, but I'm guessing this year for the virtual process, they're probably gonna have a very similar structured thing with like 3 interviews. It will just be via like Zoom probably. So yep.
And then mine at Salesforce was also pretty straightforward as well. I applied on their website, and then they had kind of a section on the application to write in a referral. So that's where I wrote in the employee at the company I had been connecting with over the year or 2 before I applied. But then it was just one phone screen, like 25, 30 minutes with a recruiter. At the end, he or she would let you know if you moved on to the final round or not. But which I didn't know when I went on the call, and then they're like, oh, you have the final interview. I'm like, wow, that was a quick turnaround. But they are really helpful with giving you tips. Like he kind of walked through, okay, this is what you did well in this interview. This is what maybe you should improve on for next time. And then the final interview was a 45-minute virtual meeting with 3 of the hiring managers. So it was with the manager I had this summer, and then 2 people who are from the management for the job, the promotion 1 level up. So something you're basically new grad role. And I'd say for that one, especially with Salesforce, they love like the Challenger sale. I don't know if anyone's ever read that book or heard of the methodology, but they want you to close yourself at the end. Like they want you to run it like a sales call. So, and these are all things the recruiter kind of told me about too, but they would also to kind of ask follow-ups on every single one of your answers. So it wasn't really like they were going through a list of questions that they wanted to get answered. They would ask me a question, I would answer it, and then they dig deeper into like my own answer. So I'd say definitely like be on your game for that final interview. And they also too, I would joke with the managers once I was hired on, It's like, you guys had dang good poker faces, because I could not tell if they loved me or hated me. They just kept it so straight. So definitely don't let that get trip you up. But yeah, I definitely say it was pretty straightforward. And then I found out like a week or two after that.
Yeah, this is really throwing it back. But I applied through University of Michigan's partner development position, so also through campus. And they like had a huge gap, and then all of a sudden it was like, you have an interview like this week. So Amazon notoriously is like hires by like immediate need, and they'll just like want you to start really soon. And there was only like 2 days between my first and second round, so it was super fast. I had 2 1-hour interviews, one with someone on my team eventually, and then one with my manager. And they asked a lot of questions based on the leadership principles, except they would like try to disguise it. But I had read before that they would try to do that, and they usually pick like 3 to 5 that they really try to target. And you definitely want to read the description for the leadership principles and try to address all of like their concerns with that. So for Amazon, that's pretty important.
All right, we have a couple more questions, but let's see. What is the career progression, or what does the career progression look like in business development? And I think Molly kind of explained how it works at Salesforce a little bit about sales and biz dev and account exec. But yeah, like what are you guys specifically looking to do in the future? And yeah, like what other career paths are out there for business development interns?
Yeah, so I can give like a little bit of insights into like how Microsoft looks like the business development role and kind of like the progression of a person within the business development field. So typically they have the internship program where they take about 4 to 5 different business development interns for the summer each year. And then they have the opportunity for those interns to come back as full-time rotational analysts. So they take another 4 or 5. And if they have a couple interns like maybe don't return, then they'll actually look like externally to bring people in to fill those gaps. So typically new grads come in through this development analyst rotation type role. And that's the analyst position. The next on the ladder is a manager. And then after manager, you have director, and then you move up to like senior leadership, which is like CVP and then EVP potentially within business development. But I'd say most of the people within like the director role at Microsoft have maybe been there for like 3 to 5 years. And then most of the managers have maybe been working at Microsoft for like 2 to 3 years. There's like some disparity in that, but like you have the opportunity to like really move up quickly in Microsoft if you're doing well and you're very productive and efficient. So that's like a super cool opportunity there. They definitely value productivity and impact. So that's always amazing to see at any company, especially within big tech. You have the opportunity to move up the ladder. For myself, I'm still kind of like figuring out if I want to stay within the business development field, go back into product management, which I've done internships in the past with. I've also done product marketing at places such as like MailChimp, which have kind of been like that cool intersection of marketing and technology at the same time, which I really love. So kind of like still trekking through and figuring out for myself, but business development is definitely a great opportunity to like learn more about what it means to be a business person within a tech company, especially within a big tech company. At Microsoft, you get the opportunity to work on so many different products and a wide variety of teams you get to interact with. So there's probably not like a better experience, like understand the business side of what a technology company really means, like what that stands for.
I know earlier I kind of touched on at least like the quick progression for Salesforce, but I feel like it really differs at every company. They definitely look at the sales process as more of like an assembly line where there's a lot of different people touching it at all the different stages to it. I think personally for myself, no one really maybe loves those entry level roles. It definitely is the most exciting time when you're not cold calling and cold emailing and being told no and hung up on a lot of times of the day. It's much more fun to just run the meetings and build those relationships and hopefully close deals. But I think for myself, I'm trying to get to that AE role as fast as possible, and then would love to be in sales management one day. So whether that be higher up in leadership. I think it would be really cool to be a chief sales officer, but that day will come at some point. But yeah, for right now, I think really kind of focus on the account executive role.
Yeah, this year was actually my team and just overall on Amazon's first partner development intern experience. So we were kind of guinea pigs. There was only 4 of us, but so it was like pretty new, and there was actually, they were hesitating on what even the progression would be. Eventually, with the full time, they offered me like a customer solutions representative position starting off, which is like, I guess, more on the sales side, but still like building off partner development. And I think after that, there is a partner development manager role, but they're quickly growing like overall just AWS and the sales for that. So honestly, it's probably going to change like in the next year. So whatever I say now may be irrelevant.
All right, we're having our raffle in 4 minutes. Let's do one more question. So I think that you guys have a lot of interesting experiences before you ended up at these big tech companies. Could you talk a little bit about the differences and similarities between business development and similar roles at startups versus these large tech companies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I've seen so far when it comes to business development, more like the startup companies, it is more like a sales role. It's that entry level like development, trying to like acquire new accounts and get new customers on board. Most companies don't have the budget or the resources like Microsoft, where they can just go out and like acquire brand new startup companies and potentially like implement them into their current like product portfolio. So that's what I've seen. And like what that really comes down to is like you have to be so focused on like really understanding like what you're trying to get out of a business development role, and you have to really question an interviewer and question a team into what the position might entail, because it is so different. Just like talking throughout this particular session, like the word business development is so ambiguous and broad depending on the technology company or depending on the startup. So it's like really reverse engineer like what you want to do from a business standpoint and figure out if you want to go more down like the strategy side, the sales side, the marketing side. What aspect of business are you most interested in, and go after that.
Yeah, I think especially too. So my first internship was the summer after my freshman year of college, and I worked for a startup called Tiller. So when I was with them, there was like 35 employees. There was a team in Toronto and a team in Cincinnati, and then I was virtual out of Chicago. But I think just like Colin said, everyone in the company, just in general, is moving at 150% at all times of the day. Like people are working their butts off because those 35 people, that's all you have representing your company. And especially too on the sales side, no interactions are bad ones. It's you just want to get your name out there as fast as possible, which was great for me because my manager was like, you can cold call, and if you get it, you can run that meeting. And if you get that meeting, like that'll be your deal if you get a deal. So she gave me all the freedom to kind of see the whole sales cycle because they needed that help. They needed extra people, even if I was a 19-year-old intern who had never cold called in my life. But I'd say, yeah, once you get into the larger corporations, business development can mean a lot more things. So it can be the more traditional sales role that I was in, or it can be these kind of partnership roles that work together to help generate more revenue for the company, like Caitlin and Colin both had. So I think as you get bigger, just kind of business development becomes more of a general statement because a lot of different things fall under the umbrella of it.
Yeah, echoing what has been said, I was deciding between a business development role at a startup and then this role at Amazon. And when I heard the job descriptions for the startup, it seemed a lot more, in a way, flexible because they actually were like, you can work on, they had no one else really for business. They had no finance person. So they were like, okay, you can do like pretty much every business function at the startup. It's like, okay, I'm not sure how that exactly falls under business dev. So that was actually my impression. And then at a big tech company, there wasn't that many business dev people at Samsung, but at AWS, I felt like it was a lot more like focused on the specific growing partners at AWS. And so you had a main goal, whereas the other one was just like, please help us survive. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. Thanks so much for being here and just answering all these questions. And